Take a look at your socks tonight. If they leave deep marks pressed into your skin, marks that take a while to fade, your body may be trying to get your attention. For some seniors, that is nothing at all. For others, it is one of the first kidney warning signs after 60, and it can show up quietly, long before any blood test gets ordered. I'm Grace Wells, kidney and diabetes health educator for older adults, and today we are talking about swollen ankles after 60, and why for some people that puffiness is connected to how hard the kidneys are working behind the scenes. Now, before anything else, I want to be honest with you. Swelling in the ankles and feet has many causes: a long flight, a hot day, standing on your feet too long, a new medication. So this video is not here to convince you that every puffy ankle means kidney trouble. It does not. This does not mean panic. It means pay attention. Because for some seniors, ankle swelling after 60 is one of the visible clues connected to fluid retention and kidney function, and knowing the difference between probably nothing and worth mentioning at my next visit can matter more than people realize. By the end of this video, you will understand what that swelling might actually be telling you, what your kidneys have to do with it, which signs mean you should not wait to get checked, and exactly what questions to bring to your doctor so you walk in with clarity instead of a guess. Let's start with what is actually happening in your body when your ankles puff up like that. Your kidneys have a quiet job that most people never think about until something changes. Every single day, they filter your blood and decide what stays and what leaves your body as urine. Part of that job is managing fluid. Part of it is managing sodium. When the kidneys are working the way they should, that balance happens automatically, and you never even notice it. But when kidney function starts to slip even a little, the body can start holding on to more fluid and more sodium than it should. That extra fluid does not just disappear. It has to go somewhere. And because of gravity, one of the places it tends to settle, especially later in the day, is right around your ankles and feet. This is sometimes called edema, and for some seniors, it is one of the earlier physical signs connected to kidney health after 60, especially when it shows up on both sides, and especially when it gets worse as the day goes on. Here is something that surprises a lot of people. The kidneys are not the only organ involved in this picture. Your heart and your blood pressure play a role too, and that is actually important, because it explains why this symptom is not as simple as swelling equals kidney disease. If your heart is not pumping as efficiently as it used to, fluid can back up in the lower body the same way. If your blood pressure has been running high for years, that constant pressure can quietly affect both your heart and your kidneys at the same time, because they are more connected than most people realize. And certain medications, including some blood pressure medications, some diabetes medications, and some over-the-counter pain relievers can cause the body to retain fluid as a side effect, completely separate from anything happening with the kidneys. So when I say swollen ankles kidney warning after 60, I am not telling you that one is automatically the other. I am telling you that for some people, this is where the story begins. And a 5-minute conversation with your doctor is usually all it takes to find out which story you are actually in. Now here is the part most people miss, and it is the part I really want you to sit with for a moment. Swelling on its own, especially mild swelling that goes down overnight, is often not an emergency. But there is a pattern that doctors pay closer attention to, and it is worth knowing, because catching it early is so much easier than catching it late. If your ankles are swollen on both sides, and the swelling does not fully go away by morning, that is worth mentioning. If you press a finger into the skin and it leaves a dent that stays for several seconds, that is worth mentioning. If the swelling has been creeping up over weeks rather than appearing suddenly after one long day on your feet, that pattern matters too. And there are a few signs that for some seniors deserve a faster conversation with a doctor rather than a let's wait and see approach. Sudden swelling in only one leg, especially with pain, warmth, or redness, should be checked promptly. because that can point to something separate from kidney function, like a blood clot, and that is not something to sit on. Swelling that comes along with shortness of breath, especially when lying down, deserves prompt attention as well, because that combination can point to the heart and kidneys working under strain together. And if you notice your urine looking foamy, or you are urinating noticeably less than usual, alongside the swelling, that combination is one your doctor will want to know about sooner rather than later. I want to pause here and say this clearly. None of this means you have kidney disease. None of this is a diagnosis. What it means is that your body has a way of raising its hand quietly before things get loud, and ankle swelling after 60 is sometimes one of those quiet signals, sitting right there at the end of your bed every single night, easy to dismiss as just getting older. This is the part that surprises people the most. Many seniors do not connect swelling to kidney health at all. They blame their shoes, they blame the weather, they blame standing too long at the grocery store. And sometimes that really is the full explanation. But sometimes the explanation only becomes clear after a simple blood and urine test, which is exactly where we are headed next. Before we get to that test, I want you to think about your evening for a moment, because this is where a lot of the clues actually live. Picture dinner last night. Was there soup involved? Maybe canned soup, because that is one of the highest sodium foods sitting quietly in most pantries. Was there bread or deli meat or a frozen meal you heated up because it was easy? None of these are bad foods on their own, and I am not telling you to throw anything out tonight. But sodium pulls fluid along with it, and for a body that is already working a little harder to manage that balance, those everyday choices can show up the next morning as tighter shoes and deeper sock marks. This is not about guilt, it is about noticing, because noticing is the first step that actually changes anything. Here is something else worth knowing, and it is the kind of detail that often gets left out of these conversations. Diabetes plays a role in this picture too, for many seniors managing both conditions. Over time, elevated blood sugar can affect the small blood vessels inside the kidneys, which is part of why diabetes and kidney health are so closely watched together by doctors. If you are managing diabetes, high blood pressure, and now noticing swelling, that combination is exactly the kind of pattern your doctor will want the full picture on, not because it is automatically serious, but because those three pieces tend to influence each other. So what does a doctor actually look at if you bring this up? The two numbers that come up most often are eGFR and creatinine. Creatinine is a waste product your muscles naturally produce, and your kidneys are supposed to filter it out of your blood. When kidney function changes, creatinine can rise because less of it is being filtered out. eGFR stands for estimated glomerular filtration rate, and in simple terms, it is an estimate of how well your kidneys are filtering based on your creatinine, your age, and a few other factors. A lower eGFR can suggest the kidneys are filtering less efficiently than before, depending on the full picture. Your doctor may also check a urine test for something called albumin, which can show up in the urine in small amounts before other symptoms appear, which is part of why a simple urine test can sometimes catch something a person would never feel on their own. And depending on your history, your doctor may also look at your sodium and potassium levels, since those numbers help explain whether fluid balance is part of the picture. None of these tests are complicated, and none of them require anything dramatic on your part. Most of the time, it is a simple blood draw and a urine sample, often done at a routine visit you were already going to have anyway. This brings me to something I really want every person watching this to walk away with, because information without action does not help anyone. If you have noticed ankle swelling after 60, here is a simple way to bring it up without sounding alarmed and without your doctor brushing it off as just part of getting older. You can say something like this: I've noticed my ankles have been swelling, especially by the end of the day, and it hasn't been going away overnight the way it used to. Could we check my kidney function and my blood pressure just to rule things out? That single sentence does three things. It gives your doctor a clear pattern instead of a vague complaint. It asks for the right test instead of leaving it open-ended. And it puts you in control of the conversation instead of waiting to be asked. A few more questions worth bringing with you, especially if you are taking medication for blood pressure, diabetes, or heart health. Ask whether any of your current medications could be contributing to fluid retention. Ask what your last eGFR and creatinine numbers were, even if nobody mentioned them to you, because those numbers are often sitting quietly in your chart already. And ask whether your current sodium intake is something you should be paying closer attention to, since for some seniors, especially those managing blood pressure or early kidney changes, sodium plays a bigger role in fluid retention than people expect. One more question I always encourage people to ask, and it is one that gets skipped more often than it should. Ask your doctor to compare this eGFR result to your last one, not just to look at the single number on its own. A number by itself can be misleading. What actually matters in many cases is the trend over time, whether it has stayed steady, moved slightly, or changed enough to be worth watching more closely. Bringing a small notebook, or even just your phone with a note, where you jot down your numbers after each visit, makes that comparison so much easier the next time around, and it puts real information in your hands instead of a vague memory of, I think it was fine. I want to be very clear about something, because this matters to me. I am not going to tell you to cut salt completely, stop a medication, or change your diet on your own after watching this video. That is not safe, and it is not my place. What I want is for you to walk into your next appointment with the right questions so your doctor can look at your specific labs, your specific medications, and your specific health history and tell you what actually applies to you. Depending on your kidney function, depending on your blood pressure, depending on what your doctor has told you in the past, the right next step can look different for every single person watching this. Let's bring this together because I know we covered a lot. Swollen ankles after 60 are common, and most of the time they have an explanation that has nothing to do with your kidneys. But for some seniors, that swelling is one of the quieter signs connected to how the kidneys are managing fluid and sodium, especially when it shows up on both sides, lingers overnight, or comes with other changes like foaming urine or shortness of breath. The kidneys, the heart, and blood pressure are more connected than most people realize, which is exactly why this symptom deserves a conversation rather than a guess. Here is what I would actually do starting today. First, take a real look at your ankles tonight and notice the pattern over the next week, not just one day. Second, if you notice swelling that lingers or any of the warning signs we talked about, bring that simple sentence to your next doctor visit and ask for your eGFR, your creatinine, and a basic urine test. That is it. 2 simple steps, no major life overhaul, no fear, just clarity. This video is for education, not diagnosis, and it is not a substitute for seeing your own doctor, who knows your history and your labs. If you are dealing with kidney disease, diabetes, high blood pressure, or heart conditions, please talk to your doctor before making any changes based on something you watched online, including this video. Now I want to ask you something, and I would really love for you to answer honestly in the comments. If you noticed your ankles leaving deep marks tonight, type the word swelling below, just that one word. I read these comments, and I promise you, you are not the only person watching this who just looked down at their own ankles while I was talking. Your comment might be exactly what helps another senior watching this realize they are not imagining it either. If this is the kind of clear, honest kidney health guidance you wish someone had explained to you years ago, This channel is exactly where you want to be because we walk through one of these topics together every single week in plain language, without the fear and without the jargon. And if you found this helpful, there is one more story I think you need to hear about a woman who genuinely believed she was eating healthy after 60 until her kidney numbers told a very different story. That video is coming up next, and I think it might change the way you read a grocery label.